Hey everyone, welcome to today's lesson. Thank you guys so much for joining me. My name is Wes. This is Interactive English, and if this is your first time here from you, if this is your first time here, please let me know. Write to me in the comments. Write to me in the chat. Love hearing from new people, but the channel is all about trying to help you practice and improve your English. And today is going to be it's a reading plus vocabulary lesson. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at a topic, and we're going to look at some different articles related to that topic. And I'm going to highlight some important and useful words that I think you should know that are helpful in understanding this topic. So it's a way of using reading to build your vocabulary. And I think it's very useful that you can do this with anything. If you are reading about a certain topic, it's likely that you're going to come across many of the same words. So that's why I think it's a great way to build your vocabulary, because the more you see words, the more that you're likely to remember the meaning and just put that up here in your active memory. So that's what this lesson is all about. And it's also about, I think I mentioned before that it's the end of the year. With these lessons, what we try to do is talk about a charity or an organization that we think is doing a good thing, and we really want to highlight that. We're going to make a donation. Some of you may see the donate button around on the page, and what I'm going to do is later on I'm going to talk about this site right here, Why Hunger. This is the organization that we're going to highlight today. They do a lot of great work relating to the fighting hunger in the US and around the world, and I'm going to circle back to that a little later, but there's a link down in the description which if you want to read a little bit more about Why Hunger, and there's also going to be a link to all of the articles that we talk about in this lesson, as well as the vocabulary list that we're going to put together. I know that I've kind of opened up with a lot right now, but that's what's going to happen in this lesson. And now I want to give some shout outs, some recognitions to all of you. Some of you that have joined me. Great to see so many members and patrons. You guys make this all possible. Hello, Lali, Takayo, Maggie, good to see you. Welcome, John, Angela, Abdul Rashid, Samir, Martha, so many familiar faces. Mina. If you guys have some questions, try to write to me in the chat. I'm going to try to keep an eye on the chat. But again, I'm going to be flipping back and forth between reading these articles, putting together the vocabulary list. That it's a lot to keep up with, but I will try to keep an eye on the chat to see what's going on in there. So you guys feel free to keep the conversation going. Today is a topic that I think is very important. I think we can all agree on this, and that is about fighting hunger. And it's not something, I think this is an issue that many countries face all over the world, especially now because of the global pandemic. I think the issue has become even more serious and more severe. And if you're reading an article about this, about fighting hunger, about this crisis, or if you're listening to a news report or a podcast, it's likely that you're going to come across or hear some specific vocabulary words or specific phrases. And that's kind of what I wanted to point out in this lesson. So let's just go ahead and look at the first site that we're going to do. And I'm not going to read the entire article. I'm just going to read a little bit and then kind of go over and put these words in our vocabulary list. So the first one is this. It says the UN warns of an impending famine with millions in danger of starvation. So just looking at that title, there's two words that I want to highlight if you're talking about fighting hunger and the crisis that is fighting hunger. UN warns of an impending famine with millions in danger of starvation. Let's look at famine, famine and starvation. Those are two words that I think are important to know what they mean. So if we go over to our vocabulary list, you guys can see here that a famine, this is just in the title, it's a situation in which there's not enough food for a great number of people. And a famine can happen for different reasons. It could happen because of a natural disaster. It could happen because of a war. But that's what it means. It's a situation, a terrible situation in which there's not enough food. Starvation is kind of the result of a famine. So this is the state, whoops, let me highlight it. It's the state of having, why won't this highlight? I'm just going to do this. The state of having no food for a long period. So a result of famine could be starvation. You have no food for a long period of time. So those are two words right from the beginning that I think are important to understand when looking at some of these or talking about this topic. So let's go back to the article right here. It says, I'm just going to read some of it. Again, I will link these articles down below. And somebody asked, Mustafa, means impending means imminent or about to happen. Yes, that's correct. So if somebody says it's an impending famine, it basically means, yes, this is likely going to occur now. It's going to happen. And this is recent. This is as of November. So it's kind of related to the virus and everything that's going on because of that. So it says that, I'll read it again. You can hear, like, again, my pronunciation, just good for your listening. I'm not going to read all of it, but just some of it. So it says that the numbers are staggering, as reflected in the ongoing coronavirus pandemic, which has triggered a new round of food shortages, famine, and starvation. According to the Rome-based World Food Program, 690 million people do not have enough to eat, while 130 million additional people risk being pushed to the brink of starvation by the end of the year. Hunger is an outrage in a world of plenty. An empty stomach is a gaping hole in the heart of society, Secretary General Antonio Guterres said last week, pointing out that famine is looming in several countries. Striking a personal note, Guterres said he could never have imagined that hunger would rise again during his time in office as Secretary General. The WFP singled out 10 countries with the worst food crisis in 2019: Yemen, Congo, Afghanistan, Venezuela, Ethiopia, and South Sudan, Syria, Sudan, Nigeria, and Haiti. The list is expected to increase by the end of the year. So they're referring to the UN Secretary General in this article. That's his quote. But let's look at some of the words that we talked about: famine and starvation. I want to look at this word right here, shortage, and often people may talk about a food shortage. We're going to add that. He talks about people being pushed to the brink of starvation. So we talked about starvation is having no food for a long period of time. I want to look at that expression, the brink of starvation, as well as saying that something is looming. So in this case, they're saying that famine is looming. So we'll go back to our vocabulary list, which again, I'm going to throw these words down below in the comments or in the description part. So you can see that a food shortage is just a situation in which there's not enough food. If you have a shortage of something, it just means you don't have enough. In this case, not enough food, it's a food shortage. That's a common phrase when talking about fighting hunger or the crisis that's going on. The brink of something. Remember in the article it said pushing people to the brink of starvation. It refers to the point where something new or a situation is about to begin. In this case, the situation is starvation, that it's about to happen, and because of this, it's pushing people to the brink, to the point where starvation may occur. So that's what that phrase means. And remember, loom. To loom is, it's when something appears that is large and frightening. And you may hear it used in the context like you could say, you see dark clouds and you say, oh, those clouds are looming in the sky. That they are large, they're frightening, they're looming. In this case, the article talked about that famine is looming. Famine is the situation, there's not enough food for many people, it's looming. It kind of means that it's there. People can see it. It's large. It's frightening. So you could use it in that context. All right. So again, those are some very important words to know. Like Arya asked, oh, what does starvation mean? That's up there on the food, the vocabulary list. So you're not having food for a long period of time. Um, Abraham asks, is it on similar like to on the horizon? Um, yeah, looming and on the horizon could be something you could say something's looming, something's on the horizon. That same meaning in that it's there, but different in that something is looming, it's frightening. So if you talk about something being on the horizon, it could be something that's good. But if something is looming, it's typically something that is bad, it's frightening, it's not good. All right, excellent. Oh, I appreciate you guys in the comments with the assist. All right, helping each other out. That's perfect. Excellent. Thank you, Lolly. So let's look at our next article. So we've talked about those words right here, and again, as we look at some of these other articles, you will see some of these same words, and that's why again, reading is so useful for building your vocabulary. If you can take a topic, learn some words about that topic, and then as you keep reading about it, you're going to see those words again and again and again, and they'll just become a part of your vocabulary. So the next article we're going to look at is this one right here. Let me zoom to the top. Let me see. Can you guys see this? So the title is In Multiple Countries, Alarm Over Hunger Crisis Rings Louder. Crisis is a word that I think we talked about in a previous lesson. It's just talking about a really, really bad situation, that this is a crisis. It's a noun. So the hunger crisis is this bad situation where hunger exists. So that is the title of the story, and this is more related to, I think, the world in general. So again, I'm just going to read parts of it, but I will link it down below in case you guys want to read and continue reading these. I always would encourage you guys to read. If you're just joining us, we're talking about reading and building vocabulary, and we're getting ready to look at this article right here. So it says, this is in Yemen. The twin baby boys lay on a bed of woven palm leaves in a remote camp for displaced people in Yemen's north. Their collarbones and ribs visible, they cried loudly, twisting as if in pain, not from disease, but from the hunger gnawing away at them. Here, United Nations officials' increasingly dire warnings that a hunger crisis is growing around the world are becoming reality. UN agencies have warned that some 250 million people in 20 countries are threatened with sharply surging malnutrition and even famine in coming months. The UN Humanitarian Office this week released $100 million in emergency funding to 7 countries most at risk of famine: Yemen, Afghanistan, South Sudan, Ethiopia, Nigeria, Congo, and Burkina Faso. So this is the situation. It starts by referring to the situation right here with these two baby boys. And the words that I kind of want to pick out to highlight here at the beginning, it's talking about this is a remote area. What that means is just kind of an isolated area that's unknown. But really, I want to look at this gnawing, to gnaw. I want to teach you what that means. It talks about these UN officials are giving a dire warning. Dire is another word that I think is very common if you're talking about any crisis or bad situation. And another word that I had in here was malnutrition, that surging malnutrition. So let's go over to our vocabulary list, have a look at those words, and then if we need to jump back, we will. So again, I know that this topic, like talking about hunger and fighting hunger, it's definitely a bit of a downer. But I want to, again, use this situation to highlight, we're going to highlight the charity and organization that is doing some good, which is something to be a little more positive about. So let's look at these words. It's talking about to gnaw. This is a verb, and you might follow it with the preposition away. To gnaw away at something. It's talking about biting or chewing repeatedly, making a hole. In this case, people might use it if they're hungry, if there is starvation. they refer to like something is gnawing away at my stomach. It's almost like saying that you're so hungry, it's like your stomach is eating itself, and it's your gnawing hunger, is the way it was used in the article. So it's a way of kind of describing how serious the situation is, that it's not just hunger, it's really extreme, it's really serious, like a gnawing hunger, that it's like eating away at you. And people might use this also in other contexts as well, not really to refer to actually biting or chewing, but if something is like really bothering you, you could say that it's gnawing away at you. If it's really bothering you, maybe you feel guilty about something. That's another context in which this verb is used. Dire. Remember, in the article it said the UN officials is warning of a dire dire warnings. And if you say something is dire, it just means very serious, very extreme. Again, it's another word, another adjective that I think is very common when talking about a crisis, a very serious situation. Speaking about hunger, malnutrition, it's talked about surging malnutrition. Surging means that something is increasing, becoming more, and malnutrition refers to like physical weakness or just bad health because there's a lack of food, malnutrition. And then humanitarian, it's talking about the UN or this humanitarian organization. And if humanitarian is an adjective, it means that it's involved in improving people's lives or reducing suffering. So whatever crisis it may be, whether it's environmental, hunger, humanitarian, again, this is another very common word that you would read when researching these topics or reading about these topics or listening to them. So I hope that some of these words are new for you guys as well. So let's move on to the next one. And this is an article that's taking place. The first two were referring to the situation around the world. This one specifically happening, this is the US. I'm from the United States. So I do end up watching more news from the US or read about it because I'm from there. And it's talking about the current hunger crisis in the US, showing photos. It says that subtitle, food banks across the country have seen a staggering uptick in need since the onset of the pandemic. So let's go down, and there's a picture of like a food bank is where if people are homeless or they're suffering from hunger, they can go there and pick up some food that people will give out. So let's read. I'll read some of it again, and then I'll pick out just a couple of words so that will add to our vocabulary list. It says, among the pandemic's many dire effects, there's that word dire again, very serious, it's making food insecurity in the US much worse. In the past, America's food banks have been completely overwhelmed by demand. In cities like Pittsburgh, San Antonio, and Phoenix, residents have lined up for hours at food banks' attempt to address the massive influx of need. Some organizations have been forced to turn people away, while others are struggling to maintain the supplies necessary to keep up. Images of lines at food pickup points underscore how devastating the economic fallout from this pandemic has been. These photos are visible line of long-standing issue. In one of the richest countries on earth, millions go hungry each day. So let's look at some words from this article. Again, I told you that as you read about these topics that are the same, you're going to come across similar words like dire. We just talked about that. But I want to talk about food insecurity. If we're talking about hunger specifically, this is a word, a phrase that you may hear, food insecurity. I also want to talk about this massive influx of need, an influx of something, and that at this point, it's difficult. People are just trying to keep up. We'll look at that phrasal verb as well as economic fallout. So those are words that I want to highlight. So let's go over to our vocabulary list so we can have a look at these. So again, we talked about I just showed you, or I just highlighted food insecurity. If you're talking about fighting hunger and this crisis, food insecurity refers to the fact that a person or family is not always able to get enough food. So it's a little different. It's different than starvation, which is you have a long period of no food. Food insecurity is kind of like, well, you have some food, but maybe next week you don't know if you'll have any food or not. That you may not know. That is what food insecurity is talking about. If something is completely overwhelmed, that's a very common collocation. It means it's just too much to deal with. So in this situation, because of the pandemic, many people losing their jobs, these food banks where people can go get food, these food banks have been completely overwhelmed, and it's just too much. There's too many people. And it talks about, in the article, are referred to a massive influx of need. If we're talking about an influx of something, in this case, an influx of need, it just means that a large amount of need is referring to like the food that people need, a large amount of need arriving at the same time. So if you have an influx of something, it's really talking about a large amount at the same time. And you're going to follow this word, you would refer to an influx of something. In this case, an influx of need. And then keep up if it's a phrasal verb, and it means that you're able to deal with something that is changing fast. And in the article, it talked about that they may not be able to keep up, that it's too difficult. The other two words from this article, it referred to things being devastating. The impact being devastating, which devastating is, I think, a very common word. It means that it causes a lot of damage. And then the phrase, the economic fallout. So this is another collocation. People may talk about a fallout. In this case, they're referring to an economic fallout. And it refers to the unpleasant results of the economy becoming worse. So a fallout is just the unpleasant results of something. But typically an adjective may come before that. In this case, you're talking about the economic fallout. So it's the results of the economy becoming worse. So again, I'm sorry that I know that these articles, it's not something that is pleasant to read about. It's difficult, but I think it's something that's very important that I think people should read about, because hopefully it might inspire not just you, but everyone to kind of take action. And one organization that is taking action is this one right here, Why Hunger, which is the organization that we wanted to highlight in this lesson, that we think is doing a great job fighting hunger. And I hope that I hope that you guys will go check it out. Again, there's a link down in the description. I'm going to tell you a little bit about it, and I have a couple of words. We're going to add some more words to our vocabulary list. So Why Hunger? What they do, again, they're fighting hunger. I'm just going to read this part right here about their approach. It says, we don't just ask why, we find solutions to hunger that transform and last. Our answer is to build the power with grassroots initiatives that nourish people and enrich the communities. So those are two words that I want. They're talking about grassroots initiatives, and what that really means is like working at the local level that nourish people. So if we go back to our vocabulary list, I've added those two to the list right here from the Why Hunger website. It's talking about grassroots initiatives at the local level, ordinary people working in an organization, and they work to nourish people, provide people with food in order to keep them healthy. Nourish is another word that I think is very common that's related to fighting hunger and dealing with this crisis. Nourish. So if we go back and look at this, so this is an organization that was actually, you may hear about it because of music. It was co-founded by, and I didn't know this before, it was co-founded by Harry Chapin, who is a famous singer from a long time ago. He wrote and sang a very famous song, Cats in the Cradle. You can look up that song. I'm not going to sing it for you. I'm a terrible singer. But he is one of the co-founders of this organization. He passed away a while back, but he was a very famous musician. And that's why they do these events and they'll do concerts and they get other famous musicians to raise money for this cause in order to fight hunger. So again, I'll leave a link in the description. There's a donate button. If you would like to get involved, make a donation. We're going to make a donation to Why Hunger as part of what we wanted to do at the end of the year now, which is kind of just, there's so many bad things going on. We ended up talking about those bad things, but then at the end trying to highlight an organization that's doing a good thing, and really hopefully getting people to think about how they can get involved, why we should get involved. And not only that, part of the reason for doing these lessons is that hopefully you'll continue reading about this and other people will continue reading about fighting hunger. We've talked about immigration. Last week I talked about protecting the environment, because the more we read about this, the more we learn about it, I think that is just better for everyone, because that makes us want to, well, make the right changes. So I hope that you learn some new words from this lesson. Links to the articles are down below. The words from the vocabulary list are down in the description if you would like to review. And again, if you want to check out Why Hunger, there's a link to there as well. So I hope it was useful. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Let me give some quick shout outs at the end. Hello, Nekla Santosh. Hello. Fabio Jesus, he says, is nourish the same as nurture? Yeah, like again, you have like these words, they're very similar. Nourish, I think you're referring to food and keeping somebody healthy. Nurture, I almost think is like taking care of someone. So in order to help them grow. So the words are a little similar. We might use them in different ways. When I think of nourishment, specifically, I think of somebody getting food. When I think of nurturing somebody, I think of not just food, but taking care of someone or something, protecting them. There's a little more that would go into it. Thank you, Lolly, for joining me. Always great to see you. Mustafa, Angela, Abdul Rashid, Maggie, thank you guys. Just reading some comments. Mina, I'm glad it was very helpful. Again, keep reading about these like articles like this. You'll come across some of that same vocabulary. It's a great way to continue building your vocabulary. In the beginning, led to unresolved situation, the economy safely or failing out. And yeah, I know, Maggie, I know. It's I'm hopeful and I'm optimistic for 2021. I know all of us are at this point, and I want to try to stay optimistic for 2021, and that things will just keep getting better. I hope, and we will. I'm gonna do from time to time. We will do more articles or more lessons like this, where we will pick a charity that we want to highlight, pick a topic that's involved with that charity. We'll look at some articles, build your vocabulary, and then make a donation. Thank you guys. Nekla, Rosalinda, thanks for being here. Amnadi, Karina, where is it? Just trying to read. Santosh, glad you like the lessons. Edelson, Takayo, thank you for joining. We'll join the action. Excellent. Botir, Elizabeth, Angela. I know that next week I'm gonna take a little break. I know I'm dragging this on a little bit right now. I'm gonna take next Saturday. There's not going to be a live lesson. I haven't decided whether I'll put out some other type of lesson or some other type of announcement, because I do have an announcement coming up very soon that I will share with all of you guys. Stay tuned. But there's not going to be a live lesson, but this is how we wanted to end the year, focusing on these different charities, and do these lessons with reading and vocabulary, and we will do more like this in the future. So this this will be, let me look at a calendar. This will be the last live lesson of 2020. So I really just want to give all of you really just say thank you. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for participating in these lessons and answering questions, asking questions, helping each other out. It really means a lot to me, and I hope that it means a lot to you, and that these lessons are helpful. So thank you guys so much for being here. I wish you all the best. I know the year is ending, and I think many of us are very happy about that at this point because it has been a very rough year. Look forward to 2021, seeing you guys there. And yes, that's when I will see you guys in the next live lesson. I will see you guys in 2021. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I will see you